Welcome everyone to a very special episode 40 of Future Strong. My name's Nicky Garcea and I'm an industrial psychologist by background. Set up Capfinity 17 years ago, makes me feel old every time I say it. And for those of you who don't know, Capfinity is a talent acquisition and management company, and we specialize in measuring strengths and skills to help people diversify their talent pipelines. I spend a lot of my time focused on Gen Z, and that's what brought me to find and then work with my great friend Lindsey Pollak. But Lindsey, introduce yourself. Let's talk about episode 40 and the wonderful time we're going to have with Stephanie.
You want to feel old? Our baby is turning 40. This is such a milestone achievement. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Please say hello and introduce yourselves in the chat. We love to know that you're out there. My name is Lindsey Pollak. I am a career and workplace consultant, author, and speaker. My most recent book is called Recalculating: Navigate Your Career Through the Changing World of Work. And like Nicky, I am so passionate about all things Gen Z and future of work. And I'm a very proud ambassador for Capfinity. Nicky and I are also very active members of NACE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers. And this past year, both of us served on committees that we wanted to talk about as that work has come to an end and we're starting the next year. And I had the very great pleasure of serving on a task force related to the future of career services with our guest today. So Nicky, I'm so excited to introduce everybody to Stephanie Pallente of Cigna, who was my friend on our task force and my blowout partner. I was always looking at how her hair was done in the corner. And we're so excited to introduce Stephanie Pallente. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Very excited to be here.
Thank you. And we have some welcomes in the audience. There was one we were specifically looking for because Stephanie has a special welcome. We have our friend Trudy Steinfeld from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Hi, Trudy. And Fred, we were waiting for you this morning in Provincetown, where I had the pleasure of visiting you and your husband, Tony, last week. But Fred, Stephanie has a special message for you. Stephanie.
So Fred, don't know if you remember, but we were talking in preparation for this call about attire and being very fashionable. And I said, ironically enough, this is one of my favorite dresses, but I have a vivid memory of you and I posing for a picture at the Orlando NACE conference a few years back, and I was wearing this same dress. So I just wanted to remind you of that because not only was I wearing this, but you had shorts that coordinated beautifully.
Amazing. And maybe for our next episode, we could just show all our photos because I have some lovely photos with Fred as well. So perhaps we can just do like a best of collection. Stephanie, will you share a little bit about your role in President-elect in NACE and just a little bit about your career?
Sure. Thank you for having me. Number one, again, I'm really excited. So my background has always been within talent acquisition. Most recently, I've been in the role as senior manager and early career leader for Cigna. What that means to everybody on the outside looking in is I am responsible for overseeing our early career recruitment function for Cigna's undergraduate leadership development programs. And probably if you asked me that, the same question this time, maybe even a few weeks ago, I would have said 9 distinct leadership development programs. However, we keep evolving and adding additional. So we're going to be adding 2 additional ones going into our portfolio this year that are focused on undergraduate students. And I have a rock star team of recruiters who really partner with our business in strategically planning on how to attract early career talent and then partnering with our universities in order to have those adequate pipelines. But how did I get to Cigna? I think it's been a little bit of a journey, and some of that ties into my role with NACE as well. Is a number of years ago, and we will leave that number blank for now because it dates me. But a number of years ago, I had the opportunity to transition out of professional talent acquisition into an early career role. And it was through the encouragement of a former leader to apply for that opportunity. And I did. And looking back, honestly, it was the best career decision I ever made because I found an area of talent acquisition that I am super passionate about. I love being able to engage with students and being able to have a say and a touch point in how they start their careers. But not only that, I worked under a fantastic leader who introduced me to NACE. He is a former president of NACE. That's how I really got my grounding with the association. And through that introduction, was then connected to a wealth of leaders, Trudy being among them, who really encouraged me, I learned from, and really brought me to where I am today from volunteering in some of those committees that you guys referenced, to being encouraged to taking on additional leadership opportunities. And I think through that affiliation, I've built a very strong network of colleagues. I think I've expanded my portfolio of knowledge about the marketplace that and profession that we all work in. And I really wanted to do more. So most recently as vice president and now coming in as president-elect, really helping to be the voice of our members as we support students.
I love that. You know, I talk to a lot of college students about professional associations, which I think sometimes sound a little bit old-fashioned, but so many of them have evolved in these really incredible ways. And I think leadership, Stephanie, of people like you is so powerful. Everybody, please introduce yourself in the chat. We have our good friend, Mike Summers from Lafayette College, my dad's alma mater. We all hung out with Mike at the NACE conference in Portland, Oregon. A little bit of a competition going of who has the best photos with Stephanie Pallente. Trudy Steinfeld threatens a photo as well. So Stephanie, your Instagram is going to be blowing up. Everybody else, please share your comments for sure.
And Mike and I shared a flight back and forth from Portland together. Not only a flight, but a bus ride, because we both traveled in and out of Allentown, Pennsylvania together. But Mike, we didn't even take a picture. So maybe next time.
It's all about the photos. I think we need a photo booth at the next conference for sure, with outfit changes. Stephanie, I want to go back to your role in recruiting, which is the function of so many people who watch our show. Question we ask a lot, would love to hear from you. What's keeping you up at night? What's on your mind?
A couple of things. One, I referred to the fact that Cigna is growing our early career footprint in adding additional development programs. So being able to work with our business leaders and strategize with them, but use it as an educational opportunity so they understand that it's not just about acquiring talent, that it is more about attracting talent and what those key differentiators are. So I think that's one piece that somewhat, when you think about leaders in roles, they are a little bit disconnected from the body of work that we are so intimately involved in day to day. So they assume attracting college talent is easier than it really is. So I think there's that educational component that keeps me awake. And certainly my team and I have a lot of conversations about that. But beyond that, it goes into the overall market. In a recent NACE survey, it indicated that there's an uptick of 30% of hiring taking place within the collegiate landscape. So I think we are now competing even more so for the same pool of talent. And that's even tighter when you think about some of the specific skill sets that are either niche or just overly in demand, like our new analytics leadership program. There's not enough analytics talent. Everybody is churning for it. And the same can be said with STEM and others. So I think they're the two main things that keep me awake. And, if I added a third in, you hear about the Great Resignation. I'm very concerned about, how do we make sure that as we're attracting early career talent, that we're able to retain them and grow and develop them. And then I guess personally speaking, I want to make sure that my team members are always engaged and feeling valued and not burning out so they don't look elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a challenge at the moment, isn't it? Just keeping the recruitment teams on side with the level of pressure that they're under. And I think in the US, it's one of the most in-demand roles, even ahead of software developer at the moment. So yeah, it's a big thing. From a future perspective, Stephanie, and I hear what you're saying about having to find analysts and developing new programs. What are some of the things that you're considering, those that you can share, that you're thinking about innovating on, things that excite you as you look into that future and kind of, I guess, support Cigna with the scaling that's happening?
Yeah, and I don't think, and I'll be very blunt, they're not crazy innovative things, but in the big scheme of things, for us, it's really important about the relationship piece. I think Cigna has always been very focused on that one-to-one connection with students. And when we went into the pandemic and we're really all thrown for a loop that everything had to shift away from that, in-person connection to a virtual landscape. I think it was a huge transition for our managers and our associates that help with recruiting to get their arms around that. So, as we move forward, it's really about continuing on that journey of relationships with the students, relationships with our partner universities, just in a different lens, that you can do it in a hybrid way, that there will be elements that we go back to campus. There will be elements that we will continue pursuing in a virtual framework, because we learned a whole lot over the past 2.5+ years that we can be successful in a virtual way. So leveraging those relationships, but again, those innovations, or if you call them innovations, really are tapping into that key element of engaging with students in a different way to make sure we're educating, attracting them, and then essentially closing the deal that they really are excited about joining Cigna.
I want to welcome some new viewers. We've got Kathleen from Western Connecticut State University in Danbury, Connecticut. Saeed attending from India. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. On that topic, Stephanie, of some of the more innovative or new programs that you're offering virtually, I think everybody's always interested in hearing specific examples of what works. I know that you did a program really targeting non-actuarial majors to consider actuarial careers. Can you tell us a little bit about how you went through that program, a little bit of a case study?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will give props again to Allison Eastwood on my team. I don't know if she's on today's call, but Allison really spearheaded this activity. That when you think about actuaries, it's a very niche skill. It's a very niche job that unless you've already known about it and have targeted that as a career path, you really don't know, what does an actuary do? And essentially that's what Allison did. She's like, you know what, we have to sort of take the blinders off for a lot of college students, whether they had preconceived notions of what it is, or just the simple fact that they don't know what an actuary does. So she created a program working with members of our actuarial executive development program to really take a look behind the curtain as to what they do and how students in what could be perceived as non-traditional majors as an actuary apply those skills, those learnings, those capabilities into the body of work that we do. So the events that were hosted, again, during COVID, all looked at identifying statistics majors, math majors, economics majors, and other similar, to really, again, talk a little bit about that body of work, what an actuary does, the impact it makes to the business, how that ties into other functions within our organization and other insurance companies for that matter. And it really opened the eyes and gave us a wider pipeline of talent coming into that program. And again, because of the success that we saw, despite being virtual, that is an area that we're going to be continuing on with moving into the future.
I think I have to challenge you when you said you weren't doing anything innovative. I think the things that you're doing are incredibly innovative. One of the things that you've spoken to Lindsey and I about previously was your personal commitment to diversity, but also Cigna's commitment to diversity. Yeah. And something actually, when Lindsey and I put our ACEs methodology together, you really inspired us around you gave us quotes in relation to being very authentic in relation to diversity, and actually that linking to what the company does. You shared with us some activities where you've taken health vans to Howard. Would you just share a little bit about that experience, but also some of your other commitments to DE&I at Cigna?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I guess, to level set everybody, I am proud to work for an organization that is committed to DE&I. And I think it's spoken into everything that we do, when you think about our employee resource groups to even our commitments to our customer base as well. But going back to some of the activities that we've been doing, and I think it was a pilot this past year with Howard University that was so successful, we plan on taking it on the road with our health vans. We have these really cool health screening vans that bring healthcare into the communities that we support as an organization. But this time we really connected it not only with partnering with members of our health services organization and our business development team, but adding that recruitment lens onto it. But we pulled up this health screening van into the campus of Howard University. We marketed it over a number of weeks leading up to the event and provided free screenings for students, faculty, and community citizens that live in the Washington, D.C. area to come in and get a free health screening. We had a number of clinicians on staff with us that were providing not only the screenings, but really one-on-one coaching. And one of the areas that I think I want to recognize too is when we think about all of the studies that us in this profession hear about, touching on mental health within students right now, working through the pandemic. We had a number of behavioral experts on site as well that were having one-on-one coaching sessions with students. So I think the value in that transcended just recruiting. But as a benefit to that, they saw Cigna as a really good organization that is committed to its customers and our employees. And by nature, they wanted to have conversations about, you know what, I want to work for you as well. So I think there was inherent value in things, and it's something that we're going to be continuing on with. One of the other things that I thought has been fantastic that our team has worked on, and again, kudos to my colleague, Keisha Farrington. She's created a really strong sense of community from a DE&I perspective that really has been focused on the Divine Nine. So when you think about the fraternity and sorority system, the Divine Nine is everything for those within the African American Black population. And we now have a community within Cigna that we had an HBCU celebratory event earlier on this year, and it leveraged all participants from the Divine Nine to participate and engage in conversation and support each other. And through those connections, we now have advocates that will help us in our recruiting, that bringing that message to the HBCU universities to say, you are seen, you are heard here at Cigna. Let's have a conversation. And it's something that now we're expanding into the HSI population as well. So more to come. But again, innovative things that we're doing that really are looking to engage and make sure candidates and our customers are aware of our commitment to DE&I.
That is so fantastic. I hadn't heard you describe that before. I want to go back to diversity, but first we have a lot of comments on the actuarial program that you mentioned, Stephanie. So I want to first welcome Olivia from the UK, from Dial Global, our friend Susan Brennan from our task force at NACE. Susan, thank you for joining us. And then a couple of comments on the actuarial program. Saeed said there's so many actuary jobs, but people really don't know anything. Great that such unconventional areas need to be explained. And he wanted to know, Stephanie, is it possible to get a link to those programs, or is there anything online publicly about that actuarial pilot program?
The pilot program, meaning some of the event-based activities that we had, there's nothing available online yet, okay. But all of our leadership development programs, which our actuarial program is one of them, is on our career site. So if you go to Cigna.com and then go under the student section, you'll find opportunities or information about all of our LDP programs. However, when we think about what we are planning for the fall semesters on the actual event, so you want to be an actuary, those are in process of being planned out and put on our calendar for the fall. So come back to that Cigna career site in early to mid-August, and you're going to see our calendaring of events there.
Fantastic. And Kathleen from Western Connecticut State University, obviously near Hartford, a big insurance capital, really liked your comments on getting actuarial information to a broader student audience, and students are really interested in those mini experiences. And Nicky, I thought you might want to jump in on some of what Capfinity is doing related to letting students really experience the true work of a company. I think it's true with the actuarial program that you talked about, Stephanie, but also just tying people into the fact that you are a healthcare company, and that's the mission of the organization. Nikki, I know you have some research on how important that is.
Yeah, I mean, the research that you're referring to, I think you covered a little bit with LaToya, our head of marketing 2 weeks ago, which was that across the US, when we went out on a piece of research with the Wall Street Journal and YouGov, compared to pre-pandemic times when students were looking for insights around 40%, it's now over 82% of students want to get that cultural insight. And I think Kathleen mentions Forage in the chat, which is a great platform for being able to provide those insights. From a Capfinity perspective, I think we're finding two ways, particularly across the US, that people are starting to want to do more really in the attraction space. And one is creating much more upfront preparation. So Lindsey, you and I talk a lot about giving students clarity, and actually sites like Stephanie says, we've had Latham and Watkins on before, really giving insight into the process and maybe a little bit of job simulation about what you're going to go through and what roles will be like. And the other thing that I see rising is in the attraction space is matching tools. So lots of students to a program like Stephanie's just might not know which one would best suit them. And anything that you can allow the students to go through just to give a bit of insight, but then be matched to maybe their top 3 opportunities within the company is really helping guide people into those roles that perhaps, you know, people don't necessarily wake up age 18, 20 and go, I'm going to go into an actuarial role, because they don't know what it is. It's the same as industrial psychology. You know, you just don't know what these jobs are. So yeah, prep, matching, and anything that gives a bit of work experience, I think is really key.
Thank you for sharing that. We also want to welcome our friend Mary Scott. You referenced her research and she's joined us today as well. Stephanie, talking about the students, and Nikki sort of said nobody kind of wakes up knowing they want to be an actuary. Obviously, technology jobs, as you mentioned, are super hot. Can you just reflect a little bit on Gen Z? You've been doing this for a while. You've worked with millennials and other generations. Are you seeing any differences? And I'm really curious, especially since the pandemic, such a unique experience to be in college during, you know, such a difficult time, starting their careers hybrid, remote, et cetera. Can you just tell us your impressions of the students that you're seeing today?
Yeah, and I think I have a little bit of an intimate look into Gen Z, as I have 2 Gen Zers in my family and my children. So I probably maybe too much of an insider look, but going back to the professional side, yeah, I do see some big differences between millennials and Gen Z. And I think the biggest one is, I think we've all come to know millennials as sort of the me generation, that it was about them and what they wanted. So from an employment perspective, you had to tie a lot of that in. And there was also a lot of, I want more, I want it now. And trying to balance the what and the now with a corporate culture and a corporate process was always a challenge. So finding that right balance. However, at least what we're seeing so far, what I'm personally seeing from a Gen Z perspective, I think they're a little bit more grounded. They understand sort of the ebbs and flows a little bit more than the millennials had, probably from some of the ups and downs their parents had experienced as well, with reduction in force and, you know, just the recessions and everything, you know, along the lines there. So I think they're reasonable in their expectations a little bit more so than millennials have been. However, another, you know, sort of aspect that could be a detriment, but could be a positive, is the level of transparency that they want and need. So from a positive perspective, I agree with that. You know, when you're communicating opportunities to Gen Z, you want to make sure that you're laying everything out in a very palatable, understandable way that really engages them. The downside to that is we also see, from a transparency perspective, they talk, and they talk a lot. And that could be problematic in terms of compensation. So talking to their peers, what did you get? Here's what I got. Sometimes it's a good thing, especially if you need to make incremental change within your organization. But when you think about compensation, it's not a cookie cutter approach. And sometimes that transparency and the talk and the churn that happen can lead to problems. So again, it's that fine balance.
Lindsey and I are both smiling at each other as you say that, because we've got so many examples of Gen Z talking about salaries and asking questions about salaries, which Lindsey tells me is a particular feature of the generation. So this is a new world for us.
Absolutely. You know, again, going back to my son and the chatter within his friend group, you know, comparing intern salaries, and he's like, Mom, so-and-so is getting $34.50 an hour. We're the same major. I said, I get that. All companies have different budgets. I think you should be happy with what you have. So that was the mom hat going on. But at the same time, the professional hat is sharing information with my colleagues and my program colleagues. Here's competitive information. We need to be on this.
I have very publicly outed myself as an advocate for pay transparency. So I will just acknowledge that to the world. Our fabulous producer, Haley, has posted the link that you mentioned, Stephanie, in the chat for those who wanted it. I want to drill down, though, on that issue of compensation. And the question I get a lot is from recruiters who cannot offer the top salary. They know that their company is just not going to pay the most. Can you talk just from your professional perspective as an active member of NACE, as well as somebody who's done this a long time, when you are competing with companies that can just simply pay more dollars? How do you position that with students? And what's your advice to people who just can't compete on the salary level, but have a lot of other good things to offer?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. And to be honest, we live it every day at Cigna. And, you know, I think some areas more than others. And if I use our largest leadership development program is our technology early career development program. We hire 100 interns and 100 full-time associates into that program annually. It's technology. We are healthcare. We are insurance. So students don't necessarily correlate the innovation and the body of work that we're asking them to do with preconceived notions in our industry. But internally, our compensation team, you know, we just can't compete with the likes of the big tech organizations. We're never going to be a Google or a Facebook or an Amazon or any of the startups with compensation. And we talk a lot about, not only internally on my team, but within our programs as well, is we have to sell what differentiates us and what the value is, but also keeping in mind that it could be a somewhat different student that we're trying to attract versus the big tech companies. So as an example, we talk a lot about getting students who have a passion for healthcare that fit the Cigna culture, but happen to be good with technology, not that they're great technologists and they like healthcare. So it's flipping the script on that value proposition and the student profile that we sell them, that you are going to make an impact to health and well-being through technology innovation. And that's how we're scripting it, because we know we offer very good competitive salaries and hourly intern rates, but they just aren't at the level of some of the tech companies.
It's such wise advice. And Lindsey, you and I are seeing this research all the time, that you need to pull out the other things. You need to look at the flexibility, the culture, the diversity commitment. Just as we close, before Lindsey waves her magic summary wand, Stephanie, I'm interested, when you think as you move into another recruiting year and you're talking about diversifying your pipelines, what are some of those future skills that you're hoping your new Gen Zers will demonstrate for you at Cigna?
It kind of ties back to one of the NACE committees as well. If I could give a plug for that, you know, is the career readiness competencies. And I think they're really important, that in a lot of ways, while we want to make sure that we get talent that has the functional technical capabilities for the organization, we want to make sure that a lot of the transferable skills that are articulated within the NACE career readiness competencies also take very much a priority in our assessments. We want individuals who showcase leadership capabilities and can bring that into our organization. We want individuals who are collaborative and have a team-oriented mindset that they're not going to be sitting working by themselves all the time. Many of our functions, it's not just even within our sales function, they're not just sales. They're engaging with legal and compliance and underwriting. They have to have the ability to bring all of those to the table. So I think, again, going back, we want to make sure that it's much more of a holistic view of a candidate rather than just functionally specific.
Nicely said. Before I hand you to Lindsey, Stephanie, thank you so much for being on Future Strong, giving us such great insights, and best of luck as you go into another recruitment year at Cigna, but you're doing great work. Lindsey, what are your takeaways today?
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for the 40th episode of Future Strong. We were so delighted to speak with Stephanie Pallente of Cigna, also the president-elect of NACE. And Stephanie, a couple of specific takeaways. Number one, you told us a really great case study about recruiting actuaries from non-actuarial majors and really educating students on careers that they may not be familiar with. And I think that's a great model, as many of our audience members shared, of inviting students to experience work and see that it might be a really great fit for them. Number two, you talked about the groundedness of Gen Z, and we've got Mary Scott and Mike Summers in the audience who gave a huge thumbs up to the idea that for Gen Zs, transparency is authenticity, and that's one of the most important factors for them in choosing a company. You talked about the pros of that it's really positive, that companies can be more transparent, that we are all being more honest to find a better fit, but also the awareness that to Gen Zs, transparency includes salary, and they will be very willing to talk openly about money and compensation, which leads to a third point that you made that I think is so powerful. Not all of us can compete on salary alone, on money alone. So you have to sell what differentiates your organization from your competitors. And I love the phrase you use, flipping the switch of the value proposition. For example, if you're a healthcare company, it's not looking for students who are good at tech and happen to be interested in healthcare. You look for those who are passionate about healthcare first and have those technical skills. So much wisdom and practical advice. I have been so honored to serve on a NACE committee with you and look very forward to your continued leadership in the organization. Stephanie, thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you. Very much appreciated.
Thank you, Stephanie. And I think we will just have a moment to show what happens in 2 weeks' time with our upcoming guests. We have Jocelyn Johnson and Louise Jackson, and both from the University of Michigan, and they are going to share a lot of insights regarding their work with alum and also their work in meaningful careers. So we look forward to welcoming them 2 weeks from now. Thank you from the three of us. We hope you have great Fridays, and we look forward to seeing you all again for episode 41.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.